Please enjoy this feature presentation of the Crooked River Radio Network. This program is rated for all audiences.
Welcome to the Nanosecond Podcast. With your hosts, Erik Nannarone, Nick Goglioni, and Pat Morrow. Interesting topics, intriguing conversation, and entertainment. Erik, Nick, and Pat will be right with you.
Hello and welcome to the Nanosecond Podcast. I'm Erik.
And I'm Pat.
And today we have a special show. Kicking off, we have our guest, Tyler Danberg. Tyler, how are you?
Hello, boys. I'm doing good. Good to see you all. How's everything?
Everything's good.
Tyler Danberg, I've been waiting for you.
Hi, Pat.
How are we doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. It's great to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming in with us. I'll let Erik go ahead and get the show started, but I got a couple questions I want to know about the last couple of games. I want your thoughts on them. So that's just kind of a warning that I'm coming.
Well, I think I might steal your thunder a little bit, Pat, but are you a little concerned, Tyler, about how they've been playing recently?
There definitely is a little bit of a concern when Nebraska takes a fourth quarter lead. I think, though, if they're coming off a win or not coming off a bye week, I think the response is a little bit different. I think they might get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. And rightfully so. I get that. I think, though, that what's being overlooked is they lost by 1 point on the road to number 3 Oregon, now number 1, in front of probably one of the best crowds in college football this year for a specific game. It's only 63,000 people there, but it's actually acoustically designed, so it makes it feel like there are double the fans. And they made their presence known. So I don't think that there should be as high of a level of concern, but when Nebraska takes you to the wire, there definitely is a little bit of a cause for it.
Okay. Do you think, with the penalty specifically against Nebraska that Ryan Day had, do you think he's starting to get kind of frustrated with the season, or he is starting to kind of buckle under pressure a little bit?
I don't, Erik, but you can see that pressure building, because there definitely is. With this team that was built and put together, it's national championship or bust, and they recognize that. What I do believe is huge. Did you guys see the Big Ten today? They met Ohio State's appeal to take away linebacker Arvell Reese, a Glenville guy, by the way, his targeting suspension. And so he's able to play the full game against Penn State.
I wanted to ask you about that. If you watch that play, and believe me, I watched it probably 6 or 7 times. The flow of that, the way that flowed as far as the play itself, it wasn't flagrant. How in the hell can you kick somebody out for a game or for half a game when he was, it was just almost an accident? I don't think he meant anything.
It was shoulder to the helmet.
to this day, I still don't. If it would have been flagrant, if it would have looked like he was actually aiming at that guy, it would have been a different story. But it was the way that the play developed that actually caused that. And I don't know what the hell was with those refs.
And it was the timing of it as well. Like the fact that was on third down and Nebraska eventually advanced 20-plus yards. They have a chance to win the game with a touchdown because there was, I believe, a minute 40 right around there left. So there was no way OSU was going to get the ball. But then, not just that, when they went back and reviewed it, they ruled it as a catch, but then they called the targeting penalty. So if they didn't call it targeting, that's a fumble recovered by Ohio State.
And that's the way I thought. I thought it should have been that way. Because it was definitely, I thought it was a catch and a fumble from where I sat.
Personally, right when I saw it, I'm like, that's going to be targeting. Like, the shoulder went to the head. He didn't have malicious intent, but the shoulder went to the head. And technically, by rule, that's targeting. Any forcible contact with the helmet is targeting. Am I right, Tyler?
Yes, and you brought up a great point too. Intent, you have to be leading with the crown of the helmet. I think there was it depends on what angle you look at, but there were definitely some angles that seemed as if Marvell Reese was leading in with the shoulder, but and you're right, the shoulder was the first thing to make contact there with the crown of the helmet. But also too, another key thing to look at, the rule was targeting. So there had to be indisputable evidence, and there just might not have been indisputable evidence to the point where there was no way they could overturn.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Do you want to jump in?
What about the game before that? The one that they lost by 1 point. What do you think that does to their season now? I know before, even when Myers was with the team, they'd lose one here and there, and it really didn't make a whole lot of difference when it came to the playoff times and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're right. It lowers the margin for error. It is, especially going into a top 5 atmosphere, a top 5 team, sold out Beaver Stadium this Saturday. The margin for error is so low. And even with the expanded playoff, with how deep the Big Ten is, with how great Indiana has been, there is probably little to no margin for error the rest of the way. Now, the energy around the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, still pretty positive, still pretty locked in, confident. Will Howard brought up a great point. He said he was actually kind of happy that they got that out of the way. Obviously, there's the target on their back, and there might even be more of a target on their back because there are teams that can say they pulled Ohio State out of the playoffs. But I mean, think about that. Think about that national championship team that lost the way they did as early in the season as they did, and they found a way to overcome that, and they just got progressively better as things went on.
When was the last time that Ohio State lost 2 games in a season or more? I was trying to find that out the other day, and I couldn't find anything on it.
So in 2021, they lost to Oregon and they lost to Michigan.
Really?
But I wonder, and we could go look at this, I wonder when the last time Ohio State has lost 2 conference games, because it's never happened under Ryan Day. I mean, he only has 9 losses, which, again, that's It's freaking ridiculous. Nine losses, and you've been here for 6 years. I mean, regardless of whether you're at Ohio State or Mount Union, a Division III powerhouse, that still is pretty incredible. And
I think you'd have to probably go back before Woody Hayes to do that, to actually find that out.
yeah,
I don't think it's happened. I know Hayes didn't have it happen.
Yeah, maybe that year with Luke Fickell when they lost Florida in the Gator Bowl.
Yeah, that might have been. But I've watched this team probably ever since Hayes was coach, because I liked old Woody. He was the damnedest coach I ever saw. Always run it up the gut, no matter what. Run it up the gut. Yeah, they're gonna get weaker up the gut if you keep running at them. And it was win or lose, you know. And then you've progressed now into some of these other coaches, and then, you know, you had Tressel, who made his own. He kind of made his own mistakes. That whole debacle with the trinkets that they were selling and stuff like that ended up being a lot more than what anybody knew it would be. And then you moved into
Moved into the tattoos.
Yeah, the tattoo thing was a debacle. That should have never happened. I'm talking. Then you moved into Urban Meyer, and now you're with Day. When Day actually took over as coach, I kind of questioned that because I was afraid that he wasn't a known enough name in order to keep the tradition of getting the respect position of getting players. You know, Urban Myers, if he walked on your property and he was coming to see you, you know, you knew who he was, and you'd think, well, this coach wants me to play for him. That's really cool, and he is so known through the league. That's so cool. And I didn't know if Day had that or not. What's your standing on that, Tyler? What do you think?
Yeah, his name recognition probably wasn't as high as it would have been in the football circles. But I think what made Day such an attractive candidate was he was able to perform really well as the interim head coach when Urban Meyer was not able to be with the team. And he did a good enough job there in a really tough, tightly turned situation. And then also, I think another thing that made him a really attractive candidate was his NFL experience, because he had spent time with the Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers. He had been Chip Kelly's right-hand man. And, I mean, talk about an ultimate full-circle moment now that Chip Kelly is the offensive coordinator on Ryan Day's staff. But I think it was right at that time, 2019, where you saw a lot of parity between NFL and college coaching, and that's what made him just such a great candidate and great fit for that program at that time, and now in his 6 years here.
No, I just learned something there. I didn't know he had connections in the NFL. Well, that's pretty interesting.
I mean, it makes sense why there was a few rumors last year or the year before, before Chicago hired Matt Eberflus, that Ryan Day might have been up for that Bears job. I don't know if anybody remembers those rumors, but I know they were out there.
Yeah, weren't they going for the Bears were also looking at Pat Fitzgerald, I believe.
Yeah, you're right. So,
yeah, that changes things in my mind a little bit about him. I wasn't sure when, I had heard I knew him from the assistant coach thing, but I never really investigated his background. That's kind of interesting. Have you texted Evan by chance?
Yes, I have. I tried calling him too. He was on the other line, I think.
He's probably busy busy being Evan.
Yeah. Anyway.
So where are we? I want a prediction for this week. Are we gonna clean house, or is it gonna be another tight game?
It's always going to be tight with these two teams. Now, Ohio State has had Penn State's number. I'm really excited for this one because I think this matters a lot for both these head coaches in different ways. For James Franklin, Ohio State has been the dragon that he really has not been able to slay. For Ryan Day, there's just pressures on him and his team to make the college football playoff. If they don't win, that could limit them from their chances. And I think this is one of those games where maybe 2 or 3 months from now, you look at job security and this could decide it. And it's also really fun to just factor in the atmosphere. I mean, Ohio State now has already played in a top tier atmosphere in Oregon. And there were some mistakes that were made. There were also some great plays where they navigated the crowd really well. Because when you're in a noisy environment, Ohio State likes to go to the silent counts. And the silent counts are where you're not signaling the plays out. You're not barking signals if you're the quarterback. Everything you do is silent. That way, the offensive line doesn't misinterpret signals. The wide receivers and tight ends and running backs don't misinterpret signals. So, but that takes up some more time. And then obviously the Will Howard feet first slide with 1 second left. If Ohio State is at home, they probably call timeout or he slides a little bit earlier. Who knows? But chances are that might be different. Here in Penn
they
State,
also changed that rule too. Oh,
right,
sorry, Tyler.
exactly. Oh no, you're right. I mean the illegal substitution rule will not happen this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
At least you don't think so.
Well, they changed the rule right after the Oregon game. NCAA changed the rule where if there's a 12 men on the field, the clock doesn't continue running. It stops. So they changed the rule. But switching sports a little bit, how about them Browns yesterday?
How about it? There was obviously a higher power.
I thought so
you can't
too.
Convince there was no way the Cleveland Browns were going to lose that game. That was unified football right there. Those were 55 guys coming together to win a game for the voice of the team for 25 years. It's incredible.
I want to show you something here. Let me play a quick clip. You'll get a kick out of this.
How about that team win? Yeah. What I tell you, we got to outlast them. Yes, sir. And we did. That last ball in the air was not going to be theirs, right, Nine? It's not going to be theirs because we were going to outlast this football team. I'm so proud of you guys. I told you, fellas, we got to focus on the work, okay? I told you we got to focus on the work. I also told you I love these moments. Yes, sir. Did I not tell you I love where this football team is? Yeah. I love where this football team is, okay? We're not looking for comfort. We're not looking for convenience. We're just looking for work. We're looking for playing with each other. That's what I saw here today, fellas. Last thing. I told you guys I would love nothing more than to give this game ball to the family of Jim Donovan. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Fellas, Jim loved the Cleveland Browns. He loved you guys. Okay, we love him back. We will be there for his family. This one's for Jim. Team on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I caught that last night off of one of the things I was watching, and I decided to look on YouTube and see if I could find it. And I just got a kick out of that. That everybody was so into that and so into trying to win for him. I just hope they can continue that. We could still come back.
Oh, absolutely. It's that point of the season where you got to make your move now. But it's moments like that that really refresh you. For the first 7 weeks, it was doom and gloom. It was just miserable. It was miserable to watch them. But to see them come together, and then to see that after, to see Andrew Siciliano and Nathan Zagura be obviously choked up with emotion after that pass was broken up. I mean, that was just so special. And I think as an aspiring broadcaster, to see that support for others that you want to be like, I mean, that's very inspiring. And that's who Jim Donovan was. He was inspiring. To think that 2011 was the year he got his bone marrow transplant, and it bought him time to be around the Browns, be with his family, do what he loved for 13 more years. For him to come back in the preseason as well, that said a lot, and it said a lot about his love for the team and love for the franchise. And there's only one Jim Donovan, and there always will be. He was special.
I agree.
Had you had a chance to meet Jim?
Yes. We had gotten to know Jim, not just in his time with the Browns, but with WKYC Channel 3. And I think that's one of the craziest things that might get swept under the rug about Jim Donovan's legacy. He anchored the news for 40 years. He basically worked 7 days a week for almost 4 decades. There are not many people that also work for a TV station in addition to being the play-by-play voice of a professional sports team.
And didn't he do a couple years with the Guardians too?
Yes. Great memory. That's a great pull. And that's another way I've gotten to know Jim through the years. He did games on Sports Time Ohio. He did some anchoring stuff for Sports Time Ohio. And anytime Channel 3 used to get a small package of games for Cleveland baseball, and he would do those as well.
Yeah. Evan, do you have any questions? We only have a couple minutes left.
Well, I wish my only wish is that I could have met him the way Tyler and everybody from the Guardians had a chance to meet him. Listening to him on the radio is a treat. Especially, I appreciated listening to Jim more when I was on the road doing stuff with other people. If I was out of town for some reason, listening to him call a Browns game on WTAM or 3WE, whatever the call letters for the station were, that to me was just as rewarding when you could hear him from far away and he hit you hard with his emotions the way he always would. I always appreciated it more when I was away than when I've been here. So that's just my contribution to the cause.
Interesting fact, I found out this morning he was supposed to in September start having his own hour-long show on WKNR. Tony Rizzo had mentioned it. It was going to be, Rizzo was going to go from 8 to 12. Donovan was going to have 12 to 1 till Nathan Zagura and Bo Bishop.
Wow, that's a great nugget. And Evan, thank you so much for sharing that. It's great to see you.
Yeah, likewise. I'd like to meet you earlier. I mean, we've talked about magical rides. I mean, we've 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers, but let's give credit to the place where you interned. You mentioned this on the show the last time you were here, that you had interned and you were doing play-by-play with the Lake Erie Captains, and it was a delight for me to come up and see that one playoff game and then find out the next day that they were champions in their league. So that to me had to be a real charge to call. So tell us, what were your emotions on the moment that you knew that the Lake Erie Captains were going to clinch their league title? Now, I plead ignorance. I don't know what it's called, so you'll have to fill in the gaps, but I'd love to know what your feelings were when that happened.
Well, it's the Midwest League title, so you are absolutely all good. There wasn't much time to process it in real time after the final out was recorded, because my duties, my guy, my partner, Logan Petoskey, he had an incredible call in the final out. And it was just the perfect way to sum up the season. I was down on the field organizing all the media post-game availabilities after the celebration. But there were about 3 innings to process the fact that they were going to do this, because they had blown the doors open with a 5-run inning. I believe it was the bottom of the 6th. And it was that moment when everybody knew that they were going to take home this thing. And so it was more about processing it before it even happened, more so than processing it once it did happen.
Okay, not to cut this short, but we do have somebody else coming in, and we have a couple of videos to play for Jim Donovan. So I want to say thank you so much, Tyler. Definitely hope you can come back soon.
Would love that. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you soon.
Okay,
bye. Tyler, thanks for the info. We'll probably do instant messaging offline somewhere, but thanks for the info, regarding what I would love to do, but we'll catch up sometime soon, I'm sure.
Not a problem, Evan.
Yeah, Tyler, next time that Ohio State gets screwed by the referees or something, you and I are going to be talking again.
He's still doing a slow bird about that, and they won.
I don't care if they won or not. That was wrong.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I burn about stuff like this all the time, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's what happens.
We'll be talking, but we'll get into that.
Thanks for coming in, Tyler.
Yeah.
Got it, guys. See you soon. See you, Eric.
Have a good evening.
Bye, Tyler. Okay, so let's kick into the Jim Donovan tribute, because Dave DeNatale will begin in 2 minutes. So, sorry to throw you off, Pat, but I wanted to let Evan ask questions if he had any. So, to Tyler. So, now...
You throw me off all the time, so I'm not worried about it.
Okay. So,
it's
anyway,
normal.
Let's roll the Jimmy tribute videos,
right.
And then...
We actually got 3 of them. These are little bits and pieces that I found as I was doing research last night and everything for today's shows. We'll start. We'll be back in a couple minutes. You're watching the... what is this? A nanosecond podcast?
Nanosecond.
I haven't said that in a long time. At least not on the air. You're watching a nanosecond podcast here on Crooked River. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Some of the most exciting games I see aren't always at the Coliseum, but right here in the local schools. All the credit in the world to the Browns.
The opening night of the Cleveland Auto Show, and it's nice to be with you. I'm Jim Donovan.
The night with the quarterbacks. Bernie Kosar is here. Brian Sipe is here.
So here we are to talk about it all in a timely fashion. We say goodbye to our dear friend, Jimmy. Jim Donovan was the eyes and ears of Cleveland sports for 40 years.
What was the feeling waiting on the sideline? Waiting on the sideline for the last drive.
What a great moment. And there it is, in front of another usual packed house here at Jacobs Field.
The World Championship City resides right here in Cleveland. And the voice of your Cleveland Browns for a quarter century, starting when the team returned in 1999.
Steelers, Browns, glad you're with us. Steps up, he gets hit, he gets sacked, back at the 10-yard line. And it's Courtney Brown again.
A hat trick for Courtney Brown.
The Steelers with 4 seconds are trying to get the field goal team on. 2, 1, they won't get the kickoff, and the Browns win it. The Browns have won it. He's to the 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, Nick Chubb.
It is more than fair to say Jimmy has seen it all.
How does it feel to be here and winning? Oh, this feels wonderful, yeah.
He grew up in Boston, and after stops in Vermont and Minnesota, he started here at WKYC in 1985.
And the Cavs had one heck of a season. From the Coliseum, I'm Jim Donovan.
A curly-haired sportscaster who loved covering the Browns.
But what's it like these last few hours, countdown hours for the players? Well, that's the subject of tonight's Golic Report.
Indians.
But they couldn't get it done, and it's getting wild here at the Kingdom, as you can see.
Cavs.
Now, I knew there was something I loved about this brand new Gund Arena. With the Cavs, I'm Jim Donovan for Channel 3 Sports.
And everything in between.
We're here at Reenie's Stop and Shop in Parma with our 2 finalists. First of all, let me ask you both, are you all set to go?
All set.
Oh. Are you all set, Richard?
Sure am.
We're at the Rose Bowl with my good buddy Brutus Buckeye, and we're set to go.
Including the Revco Marathon.
I'm Jim Donovan. Go the distance with Channel 3 as our crews bring you live race coverage from start to finish.
And the Soapbox Derby.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today, a new chapter will be written in the already rich tradition that is the All-American Soapbox Derby.
Jimmy also represented Northeast Ohio in the national spotlight as well.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jim Donovan. I'm great to be with Beasley Reese.
Working for NBC Sports, covering multiple Olympics and the NFL. In fact, Jimmy was right next to Chris Collinsworth for his first game in the booth.
Jim Donovan, along with Chris Collinsworth, when this game started, we saw a quarterback clinic on both sides.
Jim saved me so many times. Oh my God, I had no idea what I was doing. He was a pro. I mean, he was legitimately a pro. He knew how to study, he knew how to work, he knew how to get this thing done.
But his dream was always to be the voice of a team. Growing up, he practiced into a tape recorder, calling Boston Bruins games.
Thank you very much.
That dream became a reality in 1999 when the Browns named him the team's radio play-by-play voice.
Green stutter step, he's through, first down, 40, 45, 50, 45, 40, run, William, run, there goes Chubb, he's to the 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown, Chubb-a-lubba hub!
Jimmy always cherished the most loyal fan base in all of sports. It was clear he poured his heart and soul into his craft.
He's looking left, down the field, firing, he's going for Landry, down by the end zone, a tumbling catch for a touchdown! What a catch by Landry! Down the middle, Njoku's got it, he's at the 40, 45, 50, he's at the 45, 40, 35.
He's probably one of the most energetic people I've ever met, and besides that, he's a consummate professional. He always believes in getting things right and doing it the best that anybody has ever done, and he's accomplished that in his career. I mean, Cleveland is very fortunate to have somebody of his standard, and while the product has not always been good on the football field, it's always been good in the booth with him.
He was the ultimate professional who could always turn a phrase with lightning-quick wit.
Good practice for the Browns. Excellent practice here at Channel 3 today. Bob playing with a bad shoulder.
Okay, Tony.
Yeah, I'm shocked by Deacon saying they should have played for a tie. Because, I mean, when did that be?
Doug, don't sit there. Just go right into it.
And capture a moment magnificently.
Huh? What'd you think of that? Caroline, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Anyway, I'm exhausted.
While always telling the truth.
This is the worst loss I can remember the Browns ever suffering since they've come back in 1999. The Browns simply have never learned how to finish a game. They don't know how to win.
Even though Jimmy was born and raised in Boston, his home will always be right here in Cleveland. Jimmy, thank you so much for entertaining us, for making us laugh, for everything you did. We love you, and we'll miss you.
This television station
really has given me just an incredible opportunity to do so many things, and I just went for it all the time. And it's just been an incredibly lucky town for me to be with you for as long as we have been together, and I really loved it.
I think we're going to come back since the guest is here. Hi, Dave. How you doing?
Oh, I'm great.
Good to see you, and thanks for coming with us. You probably recognize that clip. We do thank the people at NBC and Channel 3
WKOC
for producing and letting us have that through the internet. Jimmy Donovan, man. I've watched myself. I've watched him since pretty much day one when he came back with the Browns. I've actually been a Browns fan since 1964, just to let you know. I watched the last time that they actually won a national championship with Jimmy Brown and several others. And I've watched them pretty much ever since. I was watching the day that they left Cleveland. I watched the day that they came back. And I've watched some incredible football. And Jimmy Donovan, I don't know of anybody that would taken. No, this has nothing to do with your national play-by-play guy or anything like that. But anybody I know in Cleveland always listened on the radio to the play-by-plays and watched it on TV. I still do that to this day. That was great entertaining football. That guy was a great sportscaster and everything else, and he did a lot for Cleveland. And it was so nice to have him being able to turn on the radio and hear, oh, it's the Browns game. That has to be there's Jimmy. Your comments?
Yeah, an unmistakable voice. It's funny, guys, because, I've known him for 22 years and worked with him very, very closely for the last 8. But like you, I was a fan before I was ever a friend. And, he's the last of, and from the play-by-play perspective, I'll get to that in a second, but just even from just the Channel 3 perspective, he's the last in kind of a long line of broadcasters that you watch for sports when there's not a whole lot else other things to watch. There wasn't, when Jimmy got to Channel 3 in 1985, there's no internet, there's very little cable. So you watched your local channels to get local sports. And in the case of, for a good 10 years or so, you had Jimmy on WKYC, you had Nev Chandler on WEWS.
Yeah, I remember Nev.
And Casey Coleman on WJW, Channel 8. And then, of course, when 43 got into the game, later 19 and 43, Gibb Shanley was back in Cleveland, and you had those 4 guys. All, by the way, voices of the Browns at one point or another in their careers. We don't have that connection to a broadcaster like that anymore. We did with Jimmy. I think we did with Nev, because people come and go. They don't stay in the market, for 4 years like they used to.
Unfortunately, they age out. I mean, look at what you had.
Or they leave before they age.
Look at what you had it for Cleveland weather. You had Dick Goddard. You had that guy from Channel 5,
Don Webster.
Don Webster.
Oh,
later Mark Johnson.
And now you've got Tanchek, which is okay, but there's no real connection. I love Dick Goddard. I absolutely love that dude.
It's an institution. He was an institution. Jimmy was an institution. The best way I can describe it, going to how you started with me here, Jimmy was like the soundtrack of our life when it came to Browns in particular, certainly with his radio play-by-play for 25 years. But for television and for sports, he's an institution. He was an institution. I will have a very difficult time talking about him in the past tense like this, but he's an institution, and we don't see that much in broadcasting anymore. And the other thing though, with the play-by-play, like you mentioned, we were very lucky in Cleveland for a long time to have, Jimmy with the Browns, before that Nev, with a little bit of Casey sprinkled in, Tom Hamilton with the Indians, now Guardians, and Joe Tate with the Cavaliers.
Yeah.
We've been blessed in this town with amazing sportscasters, and that's not even talking about John Telich and people like that, who I love Coughlin. Matt, over and over again. We've been blessed with amazing sportscasters in this town, and that's has gone for a lot of us now with Jimmy not being here anymore.
You mentioned John Telich. We actually had him on a podcast with us one afternoon or one evening. You watch these people on TV all the time. You get to know them, kind of, but you don't know what they've got behind them. This guy, I have classified him as the ultimate sportscaster, or the ultimate broadcaster. He was perfect. His timing was I cued him. He was right there. He sat and come into the podcast for a few minutes. We were supposed to have him on at like 8:35, and he come on about 20 after 8, and he sat and watched. He sat and listened to the guest we had on. He got into the subjects that we were talking about, and he just rolled right into it. It was perfect. I've never seen anything I've never interviewed anything like that. Let's put it that way.
I'm not sure there's a classier, but more prepared broadcaster that we've had in Cleveland than JT. And, even though we worked at opposite stations, to this day, if I need something from JT, he's a phone call away, and we've got a really good relationship. So that story, that does not surprise me to hear that one bit. JT's a class act, and I think he was probably also, okay, I've got my JT Talks podcast. How can I make it better? Well, I'm going to go on and go, be on with the guys and just see how they're doing it a little bit. Maybe take some mental notes about how I can get better every time out that I do a podcast. And I'm quite sure that was part of it too. Always trying to improve himself.
Yeah, well, I do a lot of that myself, and it's some of this podcasting stuff looks easy, but it's really not. It's grueling. No. Some of it's kind of grueling.
Nothing about this business is easy. I always try to explain that to college students and high school students. It's just the great ones make it look easy, but man, it's not easy. Nothing about this is easy.
I actually run an internet radio station here also, with music from the 60s up. And I'm always trying to find music for it. I'm always trying to take and make it sound better. And it's a day-by-day practice. Fortunately, I'm retired. I retired almost 15 years ago now. I'm not that old. I retired when I was 54. So I just turned 70.
Attaboy.
I worked for Chrysler up in Twinsburg, and it was time to go, and I knew it. So we got out of there, and then I got myself a degree in web design, and was able to apply some of that to what we have here now. But I've been at this stuff myself for probably 15 or 20 years, if you look at it, and it could have been, or very easily could be, a job for But you got to make it fun. That's the thing that I found was, even with the podcasting, if you make it fun, it's a whole lot different. It doesn't seem like it's grueling.
Well, and then to take it back to the start of this, the one thing I would love your audience to know about Jimmy behind the scenes is he made every day I came to work at Channel 3, and it's, again, been about 8 years, he made every day so much fun. He loved telling stories. He loved entertaining people. Nobody laughed harder at Jimmy's stories or jokes, well, than Jimmy. But he made it fun to come to work. And we did for about 3-4 years, kind of like this, a little podcast, a 20-minute show after he finished up the 7 o'clock news. And it was some of the best times I've ever had in my career as a broadcaster. Just listening to Jimmy tell stories and laughing and realizing I had a lot more in common with him than maybe I thought I had. And to get little insights, little things about him that people might not know about. I mean, I'm guessing you guys might not know that Jim Donovan loved soap operas. He loved Hallmark movies. I mean, that it's very true. He loved. He would come in and say, "Yeah, hey, we watched 12 Days of Christmas or whatever the Hallmark movie of the week was," and he would watch those movies sometimes on the plane when the Browns are out making road trips. But that's the fun stuff that you look forward to, and for in my case. He always had a very inquisitive mind, and he wanted to ask questions. And he'd say, "Hey, yeah, Dino, let me ask you this. Let me ask you about your time doing sports talk radio. And he would want to know about people, places, and things. And that's the fun stuff. And he made it fun for me at work. And then through his broadcast, television and radio, he made it fun for all of us to just sit back and enjoy it.
I want to throw a little curveball, and I didn't mention this to Pat to play this clip, but I've wanted to ask you about this for a while because you were the producer for a certain, in my mind, legendary Michael Regai.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't, but I look forward to it.
Do you have the clip to get off my air?
I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Give me 2 seconds here.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
In fact, I've got it right here.
Okay. Go ahead and roll it.
Here, you ignorant
ass. Now, you want to hear something really cool?
Yes.
I asked him about that when we had him on the show one time.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is what he said.
I want to play that clip I was telling you about.
I was
telling you about. Oh, and then.
Oh yeah, you have become part of the Crooked River sound effects.
Yeah, so I understand.
We have you. We have you here. It's apologies if they're needed, but
get off my air, you ignorant ass. Yeah, I remember well, fellas. And, I'll tell you, here's how I was raised and everything. I'm going to say within 10 minutes of that show ending that particular day, my lovely late mother, Patricia Regai, she called me and she jumped all over her son. He was not happy with me, guys, for saying that to a caller. So, yeah, I had to keep my mouth shut, and for about 15 minutes, get read the riot act by my mom.
You said to that guy what most hosts probably want to say to a lot of callers. So I give you a lot of credit.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring that up was because obviously you were the producer of that. So As a producer, when something like that happens, what's your reaction?
I think you can hear on the clip. I was laughing. I'm like, okay, he didn't break any FCC violations, so I'm good. I don't have to hit the dump button to get him off get us off there for that 10 seconds or whatever. That was just, I didn't see that coming. I remember just saying to myself, I did not see that coming. And that became a hot key for life. If you've ever done radio, especially if you hear Tony Rizzo and the Really Big Show, he has that little laugh track that he'll play quite a bit. Those are hotkeys on the board. And that became a hotkey for life to have that. Whenever Michael would get angry about something, we'd hit the get off my air ass. And he would say that to me for years, though. Oh, David, my mother does not like when you play that hotkey. My mom does not like it. And but it was so because I've worked with different personalities over my career. Mark Munch Bishop, Reg, as we hear there, Kenny Rhoda, Greg Brenda, Riz and Hammer, obviously with Really Big Show, Bruce Hooley, and then Jimmy. I spent obviously doing shows with at Channel 3, and you figure out a way as a producer / co-host to push buttons at the right time to elicit the response that you want to bring out the best in the host. And I knew with Red Guy, for instance, all I had to do was to play, coming out of a commercial break, Journey's Don't Stop Believin'. Because there's a line from the song, born and raised in South Detroit.
Yeah.
Red Guy's from Detroit. He's from Michigan. He's very proud of it. He would go, David, there is no such damn place as South Detroit. South Detroit is the damn river. And I mean, you would just die laughing, and it would always put the show in the right frame, in the right context. And, with Jimmy, it was, okay, it's the anniversary of Bottlegate. That's the infamous 2001 Browns-Jaguars game where, a call went against the Browns and people started throwing bottles on the field. That
I remember that so well.
The field. Yeah, and so one day, I think we were on the anniversary of it, or the Browns were playing the Jags on some particular game. And I asked Jimmy, I'm like, what do you remember about Bottlegate? And he gave me about a 15-minute story about how, Casey Coleman was trying to, who's the sideline reporter on the radio broadcast at the time, was trying to duck in while they were on the air with his microphone into the officials' locker room. So with the two teams represented, to try to figure out how they were going to complete the game, because, they cleared the field and there was still like less than a minute to go, but there was still time. And then you hear about, Carmen Policy, the GM or the president of the Browns at the time, not only had to do a press conference after the game, and his infamous, those bottles don't pack much of a wallop statement, but he had to come back the next day and face the music again. So you could just, if you brought up the right story at the right time or the right thing at the right time, you could get Jimmy to just open up and tell you a great story that you'd never forget.
We always talk here about we should record the pre and post show. There are some things that, like with Donovan, that I would have loved to heard what went on before the show or what went on afterwards. I always thought you could really gain an insight with something like that. We've been talking about doing that here, where because some of the best conversations we have aren't on the show. They end up taking place afterwards.
Right. Oh, that's often the best time for a broadcast is, not actually when you're rolling, but the stuff you'd say off the air. And sometimes you can't put what that goes on out there for people to see, but oftentimes you can. And you're right. I think sometimes that's the best, most memorable part of a certain topic.
I think Evan looks like he's got something to say here, so let me back off and let him in here. What's up, Ev?
I'm just soaking this all in. I have to admit, I have been around media in and out for about 30 years. So I know a little bit about it. Never had the chance to meet Jimmy. I would have treasured those moments had I been his producer like you were.
Yeah.
I'm coming up empty trying to think of a question to ask you about him, because we could hear that he loved his job, whether he was either telling us about how terrible the Cavaliers were or how lousy the Browns were after he announced the game. But maybe just give us something else, besides you just mentioned that he loved soap operas.
Yes.
Give us another nugget about something that he told you that he was really passionate about that might not be widely known.
Yeah, he loved a couple of television shows that we would always go back and forth on. He was a big fan of The West Wing, the NBC show about politics and President Bartlett and Martin Sheen on it. And Jimmy was a genius. And I say that because he had a photographic memory and could recall stories. He worked in broadcasting for 46 years, and I think he had 46,000 stories. He could remember, though, exact lines from the show, and we would sit and go back and forth. And it's like, I thought I was smart. Jimmy was an absolute genius. He loved animals. He and his wife Cheryl and their daughter Megan had a farm still have it in Hinckley. And Jimmy would love to walk the dogs. He loved horses. And what he would do, especially Thursday, Friday, Saturday before Browns game on Sunday, he'd go out and walk the dogs. And as he would go out and kind of soak things up in his mind and then into his voice, he would start to think about the things he wanted to say during the course of a football game. It's almost like he played the game in his mind before it went on the field. So he would set up plays in his mind, you think about Amari Cooper to the left and Jerry Jeudy to the right, although before that it would have been, Kevin Johnson and Andre Davis. And he would in his mind start rehearsing how the game was going to go before it was ever played, just by being out and walking the dog. And the other thing I'll tell you, you may have seen people reference this over the last couple of days, and it's very true. When he did a sportscast on Channel 3, he had no prompter. He had no script. What he would do is, basically get a kind of a rundown with his producer. Okay, here's what we're going to have. We're going to have, it's a 2.5-minute sportscast. We're going to have this amount of time for the Browns, this amount of time for the Guardians, Indians, this amount of time for the Cavs. Boom, you're done. And these are the sound clips that we're going to have. He would do the rest himself. He would, in his mind, figure out, okay, here's what I want to say. And then he'd kind of pace around the newsroom a couple times and start saying, good evening, everybody. Well, the Browns are coming into this week's game against the Steelers, blah, blah, blah. Nothing was written. Nothing was prompter.
Wow.
It was all basically from the mind to what we saw on television. So that's why I say when he was a genius, it's a photographic memory. Very few people can do that I've ever encountered in my career could ever do something like that. But he did.
It's crazy. There's a video of a bunch of highlights where the camera's up in the booth and watching the announcers. It's crazy how much is going on in the booth with him having to turn around, grab paperwork from the coordinating producer for the game, and he doesn't miss a beat.
No.
He didn't miss a beat.
That's a man that knows his craft.
Yeah.
When you know your craft, you can talk about, if you had to do, somebody said, Dave, I want you to do a 15-minute. I want you to do a 15-minute talk on producing, or a 15-minute thing on digital editing. You'd be able to do that in a heartbeat because you know your craft. Mm-hmm. I've done that. I've done speeches like that, and I actually do. I'm a ham radio operator, and I do trainings here and there. And
there you go.
Because I know what I got to. I don't need help. I can write a note or two, but I don't need something written down. If I write it down, it sounds fake. So what I do is I take and get that subject in my mind, and I purvey it. You know, and that's knowing your craft, and that was very impressive with him too. If that's the way he performed.
Preparation was a big thing with him. You know, he had, as we have him doing play-by-play. You have a flip card, and you have basically the defense on the top and then the offense on the bottom with all the players, and maybe you have some stats. If you watch those highlights that Erik is talking about in the booth, you never see Jimmy holding the flip card or using the flip card. It's because he's taken the time. Usually he started on Tuesdays. He's taken the time to basically know everybody on the roster who's going to play for both teams. He doesn't need the flip card. All he needs to do is to watch the game. He has a spotter if he needs him. And by the way, his spotter is also the same person who is his executive producer on television. So there's a rapport there, and they know each other's movements. But yeah, to your point, he knew his craft so well. He knew how to prepare. So all in his mind, all I got to do is be in the press box and be ready to go every Sunday, and everything else will take care of itself.
That's incredible. Go ahead.
Yeah, it is. No, I was going to say the same thing you were, Pat.
He reads my mind a lot, Dave.
Yeah, we've worked together long enough that we do that we fill each other's sentences.
I hired him for 2 different stations.
Yeah.
Felt sorry for the guy.
Yeah.
Figured he needed something to do. So we made him an intern both places.
Mm-hmm.
And look at him now.
And both of us are nonprofits.
And now I become the booking producer for all the shows. So
there you go.
On top of host. So
that's your responsibility. You're really good at that, Erik.
Thank you.
I mean, you've even found Dave here. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, we've been meaning to do this with you guys for a while, and I was, happy Erik reached out to me. It's really, I got to tell you guys, it's therapeutic tonight to be on the show and to be talking about Jimmy, because we just got done at Channel 3 with a 1-hour special.
I saw that. I watched it pretty much from the beginning to end. It was very well done. Very well done.
Yeah, I mean, our people are amazing that put that together. And so, be able to sit back and laugh a little bit and talk about Jimmy's career and share some stories. It's fun for all of us, really. It's very helpful.
We like to help.
So, just career-wise, do you have any, what's the most memorable story out of all your career that you would feel comfortable sharing on the air?
As far as Jimmy's concerned?
No, just in general.
Oh, goodness, in general. Biggest career highlight, without a doubt, was getting to host, but I will give you a Jimmy moment. My biggest career, and I've been at this now since 1998, was being the pregame host for Game 7 of the NBA Finals in 2016 at ESPN Cleveland. Getting to do our coverage before we went to ESPN Radio. That was a thrill. I mean, you recognize one way or another it was going to be history, but you had a feeling the Cavs had a really good chance because the way they had won games 5 and 6, and to be tapped to do that was a real honor in my career. And then I stayed for the game with the aforementioned Michael Regai, Greg Brinda, Mark Munch Bishop, Gerard Cherry, we all, Danny Cunningham, we all stayed around and watched the game together. And I still have the video when the Cavs won it. We just jumped up, started hugging each other. Danny Cunningham speared me and tackled me. He was so excited. But on a day that is as significant as possible for so many Cleveland sports fans, for me, it was a career highlight to get asked to do that. My favorite Jimmy career moment, we were doing at the time, I think it was still the Donovan Live postgame show. We ended up calling it Donovan and Dino later on. But we were doing the show live when the Browns traded for Odell Beckham. It was a Tuesday night or something like that. And so we were on when that happened, and it was amazing. It's just like you never get one rule in broadcasting. You never usually get to get that kind of a moment when you're on the air. It always happens when you're in a commercial break or when your shift is over and somebody else's shift is on. But we got it, and that was a great moment. I remember Jimmy was telling me a story about something, and I'm like, Jimmy, this is the only time I'm ever going to interrupt you, but we've got breaking news. And obviously the Beckham experiment with the Browns didn't turn out to be much, but certainly that night, just the excitement of, wow, this Browns team that was 7-8-1 last year and narrowly missed the playoffs, they've made such a big splash to get Odell Beckham. That was cool to be on the air with Jimmy when that happened.
What do you see?
What's it like with a big breaking story, like behind the scenes? Like if it's let's say one of the teams fire their coach, and there's multi layers to it.
Right.
What's it like trying to keep up with it and making sure you're like the person you're getting it from is reporting factually correct?
Yeah, that's the first thing, Eric, is that you want to make sure because Twitter, X now, there are so many accounts that will try to fool you. They just burner accounts or phony accounts, and I've seen many people in the business retweet somebody or go on with oh my God, we got breaking news. The Cleveland Browns have hired Mike Vrabel to be their head coach, and it's like, wait a minute, Adam Schefter is reporting it, but it's not Adam Schefter's Twitter handle. And in the old days, it didn't have the blue check. So that's the first thing. You got to verify that the story, the source that you're getting it is correct. And oftentimes for something like that, I want to get it from multiple sources. I want to get it from Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport. I want to get it from used to be Woj, now Shams Charania and Chris Fedor. So you try to vet what's being put out there first, and then whether you're a talk show host or now in my position as a writer, your just goal is let's get it out there as quickly but as accurately as we can. And then once I've done that, then I want to open it up for other angles. I want to know what other people think. I want to know what people in the business think. Whether it's national people, commentators on Twitter, whether it's our fans, I want to know what people think, and I want to get the conversation going, because that's always the big thing, in sports talk. You want to get the conversation going, but the key is, I think you had it right away, is you got to make sure it's the facts. And I'll gladly be the fourth if I'm doing something now for television, and we come in fourth, but we get it right. I can live with that. I can go to sleep at night, not worrying about that too much.
I've done it where I was joking because I'm a huge Paul DePodesta fan. Yeah. Okay.
Whatever.
Why?
Okay. But so, and Pat knows what I'm about to say here.
Didn't you detect that ring of sarcasm in that, Dave?
Just a bit.
So when right before the Cavs hired Atkinson, I decided to sarcastically tweet, "Cavs hire Paul DePodesta." Within 10 minutes, I get a call and a text from several people saying, "Are you kidding me?
Are you drunk? What's going on? Did somebody take over your Twitter account?"
Yeah.
Have you been hacked, Eric?
Yeah, exactly. But so, yes, I've done that before to mess with people. But,
yes. So there are Erics of the world out there you have to watch out for, folks. That's the moral of the story. You have to watch out for the Erics.
Yeah, you can always believe the Pats though. He'll speak the truth.
The Pats and the Evans are.
He'll speak the truth.
The Erics.
He'll speak the truth, especially about the Browns.
Yes,
I have said this past season. I have said that there is a core issue with that Browns team as far as the coaching. I said that from the first day of practice. I could see it. Those coaches were not motivating those players because they weren't communicating. And I could see it. Now, all of a sudden, we get rid of a quarterback, which that's a story all by itself. We'll leave it there. And on the other side of this, you take the play calling away from a certain head coach and give it to the guy that's supposed to be doing that. And all of a sudden, things are going to start to intermix a little bit. And this could have been part of the reason that they won yesterday. Will this continue? Lord knows, and I hope so. But we'll see what happens. What do you think, David? Am I correct?
Let me say this about that. I think there's a lot of issues at 76 Lou Groza Boulevard with Deshaun Watson and what needed to happen in the offseason to make him a better quarterback so that we wouldn't be asking questions about, when we're going to have Joe Flacco come in and ride to the rescue again. Or in this case, this year, when would we get Jameis Winston in here to ride to the rescue? I just think that there was a lot of dissension as to, I don't know if it was Paul DePodesta, if it was Jimmy Haslam, if it was Andrew Berry, but somebody asked Kevin Stefanski to fire not just Alex Van Pelt, but also two other position coaches. And obviously, we know Bill Callahan went, with his son to Tennessee. I mean, obviously, that's a different story. But an offense that had played so well over the last 6 weeks of the season was basically blown up at the convenience of making Deshaun Watson happier. Again, I don't know who did it. I don't know who said it. I don't know who gave the order. It's kind of like The Godfather. I don't know who gave the order, but somebody gave the order, and everything about the Browns looked just a mess offensively, obviously, through the first 7 games of the season. Now Watson's out. You bring in Winston. I think to your point, Pat, I think the fact that Stefanski's not calling the plays anymore does free him up to be the CEO of the team a little bit more. And hopefully they'll cut down on the pre-snap / boneheaded penalties, 12 men on the field penalties, things like that. Because going forward, that'll make the Browns a better team. I feel bad for Deshaun Watson. I don't want anybody to ever get injured, especially not that kind of an injury that, could affect the rest of his career. But for this franchise right now, it's worked out pretty well that Jameis Winston is now the quarterback, because suddenly this offense and this team looks a heck of a lot better than it did. I'm not blaming it all on Deshaun, but there was a cloud over this football team before Sunday's game.
Do you see Deshaun Watson ever playing again here?
Here
in a Browns uniform?
Let me put it this way: he might still be on the roster, but I don't ever see him playing again.
That's what I'm thinking. That's exactly what I'm thinking.
When I say he's on the roster, he might, Deshaun, feel free to take your time on your rehab. Don't hurry back. If you need all of 2025 to get better, okay, no problem. And then, it's a little bit more palatable, I think, to let go of the contract. But at some point, you have to admit to yourself that it didn't work. They had the best of intentions. I always flash around to people. I wrote in a column the day the night before the trade, don't do it. I didn't see this happening, but I didn't foresee a lot of good things happening with it. And, we are where we are now. I think the Browns may be a little too far down to climb out of this hole, but at least for 1 week, we can feel pretty good about what we saw on the field. And the fact, and I also want to tip of the cap while I'm with you guys, the Browns did a great job yesterday honoring Jimmy. I think we were all very appreciative of that. That included the moment of silence, setting up the kind of display in the press box for him, the little memorial, and then going down to Hinckley after the game to give the game ball to Jimmy's wife, Cheryl, and daughter, Megan. That was very, very classy by the Browns. And I, as a friend of Jimmy's, I appreciated it.
I played the earlier, I think before you came in, I played the clip on Stefanski in the locker rooms saying he was going to give the game ball to him. That was very touching.
Yeah, it was.
And as far as, what do you think as far as them climbing back out? Do you think there's a chance? You think they're going to win 11 games in a row?
No, and that's the thing. I mean, now you sit there and you go, okay, you're 2-6. You've got 9 games to go in the season. You're going to have to win. Especially in the AFC North. You're probably going to have to win 10 games to really get yourself a realistic chance to be, in the playoffs. So you'd have to really go, 8-1 to finish. I mean, you got to play the Ravens again in Baltimore. You got to play the Steelers twice. You play the Bengals again. You got the Chiefs. I mean, there are some winnable games. Denver's a winnable game. I think the Chargers this weekend's a winnable game. And I think also the Dolphins are a winnable game. So you've got some opportunities for victories. I fear they're a little too far gone from turning this thing around.
As far as the something else I was going to ask you now, it just poofed.
I do that all the time.
It had something to do with Donovan. Oh, did you see the Chris Collinsworth thing last night? Did you watch any of the Dallas game?
We actually, I hadn't seen it last night, but I saw it today, and we had it on the special show. Chris Collinsworth absolutely adored working with Jimmy. You have to remember when Chris came out as a broadcaster after he retired after the '88 season. He was raw. I mean, he's now the standard for color commentators in the NFL. But he was raw, and Jimmy really helped him develop those good habits and those skills you need to be a great color analyst. And think about it like this. I mean, 1989, Collinsworth started. I think two years later, he was on Inside the NFL with Glenn Dawson and Nick Buoniconti. And by, I think, 1999 or 2000, he was on one of the top on Fox's, #1 announcing team. So it before he moved over to NBC, he really valued having Jimmy there as a mentor and an announcer to get his career started. And he and Mike Tirico said some really, really nice things about Jimmy last night.
Yeah, I saw that on part of that on the show you guys put on. That was really pretty good. I'll turn it over to Evan for a minute. Wake up, Evan. You're sitting there with your eyes closed.
I've run out of superlatives. I mean, you've spilled out about as many superlatives about Jimmy as there possibly could be said, and I have never met Jimmy, but I wish that I had. I have met I had met Joe Tate previously, when I went to broadcast courses, and Jimmy and Joe were cut from the same cloth as far as the way they prepared. And I've tried to do that in my own way. Now, I've never been, like this, where I'm leading it most of the time. I'm usually a behind the scenes guy, but I've always tried to take that level of professionalism and apply it to what I do. And I'd say Jimmy is probably the best there ever was. And you were one of the lucky ones to work with him. So, I mean, that to me was a bonus. That was an
I mean, that was the thing. I got to work with him on air, and then I got to be his friend off air. And
that's the cool part.
That's the great part. And I think, I listen to Andrew Siciliano now, and he and Nathan, I thought were brilliant yesterday at the end of the game with their call. But I don't envy Andrew. It's a very tough thing to have to follow Jimmy, very much like it was tough for John Michael to have to follow Joe Tate. And in a sense, he also had to follow Fred McLeod with the Cavs games. And whoever, Jim Rosenhaus or whoever else eventually will have to replace Tom Hamilton. Good luck. It's not an easy thing to do, but we will always have the memories and the highlights to bring those magical times to life and to make us, appreciative even more of what Jimmy was about and how much he really did care about the Browns, the players and coaches, and the fans. I mean, I'm sure you guys played this. I always, my favorite call was when the Browns beat the Steelers in 2020 to go into the playoffs for the first time in 18 years. And Jimmy's call was, the only thing missing, all of you.
I remember
he thought about the fans in the biggest moment in 18 years for this franchise, 2 years or 3 years after they had gone 0-16, and we're all living through the turbulent times that was COVID, and Jimmy just found the right touch for that moment, and he was thinking of the fans, and I hope we always remember that for everything else he loved the fans.
Just going back to the 2020 season, I could not imagine how hard that was, because him and Doug Deacon doing the games off of the TV broadcast and in all 22 monitor, like that was all they were broadcasting off because they couldn't travel with the team.
Correct. That's exactly right.
So,
they would set up in their radio booth or whatever at Brown Stadium, Huntington Bank Field, and they had, I believe, 3 TV monitors in 3 big screen TVs in that room, and like as you said, you have the network broadcast and you have the all 22, and you're basically calling game from there. Now, the thing with that, like many play-by-play announcers growing up, that's how you did games. That's how you submitted a demo tape to do play-by-play. You either had your tape recorder at the game and you're doing the play-by-play, or you're watching on TV and you've got your little handheld tape recorder and you're doing practice play-by-play. So in Jimmy's case, he was ready for it. And I think it was such a relief to be able to still play those games in the midst of everything that was going on that year. That they were just excited to be able to be out there to work and, to do the home games, from the booth with everybody. And then, for those road games to have to, sit at the stadium alone and broadcast the game. But they still made those games. Jimmy and Deke still made those games sound incredible.
Mr. Deacon was something else. I actually met him once, and he actually just knocked my wife over. He was playing a basketball game down here in Cuyahoga Falls. The Browns came in that year, and they were they were playing faculty of Chicago Falls High School. I figured, oh, what the heck, we'll go. So her and I went down there. She was a Falls graduate. We were walking, getting ready to go out after the game. And I wanted to see if I could talk to him for a second. Well, he's walking along talking to somebody else, and somehow or other, my wife got in front of him and just about knocked, he about knocked her on her butt. And he grabbed a hold of her. Oh, God, I'm so sorry. I don't know if he still remembers that, but I do.
My Doug Deacon's favorite story is I actually in 1989 I was a junior high school student, and on Channel 5 Doug Deacon used to host a segment on the 5 o'clock show called Doug Deacon's Pen Pals. And what you did is, as a kid, you could write a letter to your favorite Cleveland sports athlete, and Doug would go and you basically were asking the questions to Bernie Kosar or Corey Snyder or Mark Price or whoever, and they would put that on the air of basically, you ask the questions and the athlete answers it. Well, me wanting to be a broadcaster, even at that point, I wrote to Deke with questions for Nev Chandler, and at the time, Nev, like Jimmy now, voice of the Browns, and he was a sports anchor on Channel 5. And so they arranged to have me come to the station, sit at Nev Chandler's desk next to Don Webster, and ask all these questions. And Deke and Nev answered the questions. They started the segment with Nev interviewing the Browns kicker at the time, who was Matt Barr. And, just like they were doing an interview, and then Deke comes in, interrupts that interview and says, I've got a bunch of questions for a young man's favorite sports figure. And Matt Barr's like, sure, okay. And Deacon kind of gives Matt Barr the cold shoulder, and he goes, it's for you, Nev. And so I got to be at the Channel 5 desk, actually, asking all these questions. And then for the first time in my life, they put a headset on me, and I got to pretend I was calling play-by-play just like Nev. And Deke, I brought it up when I started doing Cleveland Sports Talk, and I got a chance to see Deke years later. I had a picture of me and Deke at Channel 5 together, and he loved it. I mean, he was guffawing about it. Oh, I can't believe you remember all that. I'm like, my God, this was my entrance into the broadcasting world. Are you kidding? Deke was absolutely such a great part of Browns lore as a player for so many years, and then as a broadcaster with Nev, with Casey, and then with Jimmy. An institution. Deke's an institution.
That's exactly right. Tell us a little bit about you. What's your background, and how'd you get into broadcasting and all that?
Real quick.
Go ahead, Erik.
Sorry to cut you off, Dave. Did you on-site produce for Riga and Rhoda?
Like if they did shows on remote, I would occasionally do that, but generally no. I was at the station because when I started at ESPN Cleveland in 2010 full time there. Mm-hmm. Will Burge was kind of their on-site producer, but I was doing sports updates for that show. But then when Michael and Kenny got moved to nights, that became my show to produce and kind of be the third man on that show. And we did that show for a couple of years. But I went to Bowling Green and did a lot of sports radio there. I was the sports director of the radio station there. And then my first really big break was in 2000. A couple years out of college, I kicked around in Defiance, Ohio. I kicked around in Cairo, Michigan. Cairo, Michigan, just for it's in the thumb area of Michigan, if that helps anybody. But I wanted to get back to Cleveland. I wanted to get back to Northeast Ohio to do broadcasting. and I got a job at WOBL Radio out in Oberlin doing Lorain County High School football, high school basketball, and then we added Oberlin College football. So I did that for a long time. And then I got a chance to go to ESPN Cleveland, first as just an anchor and nothing else, and then as an anchor and producer. I did the pre-half and post-game shows for Bowling Green, their radio network, as a professional for a long time. I was the voice of the Lake Erie Crushers baseball team, the minor league team in Avon, for a year. It was their inaugural season. We, because I announced them, won the championship in the inaugural season and ended up getting on ESPN because of it, because one of our guys was staying at a retirement home as his host family that year. But really, kind of, when I went back to ESPN Cleveland in 2010, I was there for, from that start until basically when the Cavs won the championship. And then after that, had an opportunity to come over to Channel 3 and do both on-air and writing and digital writing work. And that's been my home for the last 8 years.
We've actually had your boss from WOBL on, the owner.
Yeah.
Gary?
Oh, he wasn't actually my boss at the time. But he's the owner now, obviously. But he was not my boss at the time. But Gary was just a DJ and a salesperson when I was there. Because this is from 2000 to 2008. But I'm very proud of Gary, for what he's done with the stations now, elevating it to even another level.
Yeah, there was one other question I wanted to ask. Boy, I hate when I poof like that. But anyway, go ahead, Eric. I'll think of it here in a minute.
Yeah, I'll come back to you.
Poof. It's like a freight train You ever see that? Did you ever see that, the airplane movie?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You guys were talking a minute ago about breaking news. Remember the scene where the breaking news was all those reporters ran into that phone booth and the phone booth went boom.
Topples, yes. I love that scene. I love that scene in Airplane. I love that scene.
That's what came to mind when you were talking about that.
That's kind of how it feels sometimes when you're in breaking news mode. And now with my job at Channel 3, I still obviously do a lot of sports things, but I dabble into a lot of the news things. So when we have breaking news, whether it's something that a mayor says or a president says or a governor says or something that's a shooting or something like that. I mean, yeah, we're in breaking news mode, and it's a lot like that because again, it's all the same thing. We're trying to find the answers, and then how do we tell the story the best? And
storytelling's the biggest part of it too. I know.
It's what made Jimmy so great.
The one thing about Jimmy that I liked was a lot of times he was very direct with his thoughts about what was wrong with the Browns. Mm-hmm. And that one clip I've seen 2 or 3 times now where he says we're just coming off the worst effort or the worst game I've ever seen the game or the Browns play since 1999. And he talked about it for a couple of minutes, and you could tell that he just didn't like it. But
I think that was the Jets game in 2021 where Flacco put 2 touchdowns on the board, for the Jets under and they fumbled it.
Don't remind me.
Kick. Yeah,
I was at that game.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that was the game he referred to it as the worst of the worst. That was bad.
Flacco, with his history with the Browns, really didn't surprise me. I'm going to tell you one thing that I noticed that I don't know if anybody else did, but Flacco has beat the Browns every time he's came into the Cleveland Stadium, including being on the Browns team. He beat his own team with two pick sixes.
Yeah. I'm glad. Let's put it this way, though. I'm glad the Browns don't play the Colts in the schedule, although Richardson's back starting for them. But I don't want to see Joe Flacco come in, against the Browns and torch them. We don't need that on our collective consciousness. No, thank you.
I have a couple of friends, and my son lives in Dallas, and I follow the Dallas Cowboys a little bit myself too, and I don't know what the heck they're in another situation like the Browns are in. It's not that they haven't got the talent. I just don't know that the motivation and the coaching is there. You got a decent quarterback there in Dak Prescott, and couple of his receivers are decent. But
CeeDee Lamb is a top 3 or top 5 receiver in the league. But I think that with Dallas, the problem, and it's the same problem it's been really since 1996, it's Jerry Jones.
I was going to say it's Jerry.
Yeah, Jerry Jones is a Hall of Fame owner, but as a general manager and the guy that picks the 53, no, not anymore. And the problem is if whoever becomes the head coach, and even they tried Bill Parcells there, and it didn't work out the way they wanted to. Whoever the head coach is, you've got Jerry looking over your shoulder, and Jimmy Johnson didn't like it. Barry Switzer after a while didn't like it, even though all those guys were close friends. I think ultimately, what may actually help will be when Jerry takes a lesser role, because I know he's in his 80s now. Takes a lesser role with that team and allows somebody new and fresh, I think, to run things. I'm not a huge Mike McCarthy fan either. I remember there was talk of one coaching vacancy or another that the Browns were looking at Mike McCarthy. I was always glad they kind of steered away from that.
Yeah.
On a kind of off the field thing, industry wise, how do the stations decide when they do on remote or on remote broadcast where they're gonna go? Is it usually with sponsors?
Yeah,
for example,
it's partner driven or sponsor driven usually. Yeah.
For example, over half the crew at KNR once or another was at Beef O'Brady's out in Stowe.
Mm-hmm.
So I met half the staff there, and then when Riz and Hammer did the stuff with Acme, I met them there. But it was kind of cool to say I met all the on-air staff at one point from 850.
Yeah, but most of that is sponsorships.
Cool.
Bruce Hooley and I used to do a lot of our shows at Park Mazda in Worcester. Mm-hmm. Sponsor would like us to come down and do a show once a month to help sell cars during the course of it. The model year is running out. It's November, and we need to get rid of those the 2015s so we can make room for the 2016s. And they would have us come down and do the shows. And I noticed. I listened to a fair amount of sports talk, but not nearly as much as I did when I was actually embedded in it. But I feel like we're not spending as much time now on remote with shows as we used to be in the business. I know the Browns will take their preview show or the Kevin Stefanski show on remotes, their network show on a Wednesday or Thursday night to a local sports bar or things like that. But a lot of times it's from a technology standpoint, it can be a headache to set those things up because it requires a lot. It requires a stable internet and things like that. Sometimes the technology you end up just throwing things against the wall and say, okay, well maybe this will work or that'll work. And sometimes it's not worth it. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. But being on remote is fun because that's where you do get to meet the fans.
I had a friend that used to set up remotes, the technical part of it back in Oh, this was back when WCUE was in Akron or Chicago Falls. This would have been probably late 70s and early 80s. I used to go on remotes with him all the time. And they just had come out with that new board that would actually put everything through the telephone line and make it and equalize it and all that. But you had to have it. Otherwise, before that came along, you had to have a T1 line put in by AT&T in order to get your line there and have a stable line. That stuff was back then. It was terrible.
Oh, even I'll go back 20 years ago when I was at OBL. We would do a high school football preview show on remote every week. So I mean, we're going to a bar in LaGrange, and then next week we're going to somewhere in Vermilion or somewhere in Elyria. We had to broadcast. We'd have to take the company van, and drive it to wherever, and then set up this huge antenna up the top of the van, and send out. You would know this a Marty shot, a Marty signal, and it would broadcast from the van back to the station. Now the only problem with that was we could talk to the person on the board, but they couldn't talk back to us. So a lot of times you would have to use cell phones. Somebody would have to, text you. Even in 2003, all right, we're back in 10 seconds, or we're back in 20 seconds, or you just had to wait till you heard a liner or something. Now back to the high school football show, blah blah blah, to know that you're ready to go back on the air. So the technology has advanced, but it still can be a pain in the butt sometimes to do those on-site remotes.
I've watched some. Hang on just a second here. Let me finish the thought here. I've watched a couple of these explosions in that where they take and send the press reporters out, and we had one down here in Akron long years ago. It was over there at Goodrich, and a tank car caught fire, and they were getting ready to evacuate it all. Well, my friend had this radio he had a scanner with all the frequencies that the TV stations used. And we could tell 10 minutes ahead of time what was going to happen and what they were going to say on the news. That was grand. I love that part of that.
That's cool.
That was technology at its best back then. Okay, Eric, sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
When did no, you're good. When did the Comrex come out?
Like the Comrex Access, I feel like that came out like in the one that basically would let you do a remote, no matter if you had an Ethernet line or if you want to just use like a cell phone. I feel like that came out like in the mid 2000s, I believe. Before that, you would have to use the Comrex was basically flipping a switch up and down, but you sounded like you were on a phone call. It didn't have that sound as if like what we're doing now, where we're just sitting around and talking, and it sounds like we're all in the same room with each other. It wasn't really until it wasn't until about I think about 05, 06 that those things started to get better. I mean, it was like you went from a Comrex to, I think we called it a hot box to connect via phones, and then it was the Comrex came out with the Access. It's much easier now than it used to be.
It's crazy to see. Like, I know of a station here locally in Akron that does where they don't have the updated Conrex. So it's there. You could tell they're doing it over the phone line. When they take a call, the caller sounds like they're in studio, and the host sounds like they're on the phone.
Yeah. Gotta work. Technology is a crazy thing. Yeah. That's for sure.
It is.
That's exactly right.
When you don't have the right equipment, that really
that
brings
depends on
down the value.
Too. You got some local. That depends on the owner too. If you got some local owner that ain't got no money, or a lawyer that owns your station, and he's got it because he's wanting to write it off. You know, you're not going to get much. You're not going to produce much. That's why that guy from Oberlin that we were talking about a couple minutes ago fascinated me when we talked to him. Because he was actually taking the money, what little he was getting, and investing it in the station. And that, to me, was pretty ingenuitive, let's put it that way.
Well, and in that station's case, they sell out all the avails for high school football like 3 months before the season starts. I mean, and that's two stations. I think they have games on both their stations out there, OBL and DLW, and I think they have an internet game or a YouTube game, and they're completely sold out. I mean, Gary has invested in making high school sports accessible and sound worthy and with the best technology possible. And they've made it, selling it, a priority. And, you know, if you do that, you can have success.
It's sad when a local owner keeps equipment that should have, that's so obsolete that it should have been changed out, 10 years ago. And Pat, you know what station I'm referring to.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I do too.
But we're not going to out them on the air. But yeah, they're.
No, I don't think we better.
What?
I said I don't think we better.
No.
Yeah.
Out them on the air.
Yeah.
No, just be nice, Eric. Come on.
We'll just say a former Browns player hosts a show on that station now. But anyway, it's sad when the station is that budget. Like, I just think sometimes, like, in that case, it's time for that, ownership group to sell. Anyway, there's my rant or off-topic thing.
Can I jump? Can I get you something real quick on with that, Eric?
Yeah.
Real quick. Here's my last. I bet you didn't know this about Jim Donovan's story.
Okay.
He loved listening to play-by-play, whether it was driving home from, listening to NBA or NHL games on satellite radio, or on his tractor over the weekends on Friday afternoons or Friday evenings or on Saturdays, listening to high school games. He actually once told me he really wanted to buy a local radio station, in addition to everything else he was doing, because he loved, like, for example, I don't think they'll mind if I give them a shout out, WHBC down in Canton. He loved their production for how they do high school football. And he always said, hey, yeah, that fascinates me. What do you think that would be? What would that take to do that, to have a station like that? And he always loved that. So there is something special about local radio. I wish we could have. This was before COVID. I wish, because I told him, I'm like, if you were to do something like that, let me be your co-pilot. I've had a lot of experience with small market radio, but we never did. But it always intrigued me how much he loved listening to just whatever game was on the radio or on satellite radio.
I was good. Oh yeah, little fun fact I don't think I mentioned on the air yet. With Jim, he was actually supposed to have an hour show on ESPN Cleveland. I don't know if you knew that, Dave. But Tony Rizzo was talking about it today. He was supposed to start it in September, but because of obvious.
Well, yeah, they had talked about it because he always wanted to have a radio show or a podcast. So I know that had been discussed prior to August.
Well, with that, we want to say thank you so much for joining us, Dave.
Yeah, Dave.
Oh, it was a blast, guys.
It's you're always welcome here, man. If you want to come back, just let Eric know, or I'm gonna tell. Why don't you tell everybody how to get a hold of you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Dino Cleveland, on X at Dino Cleveland. And you can see I wrote a couple of pieces about Jimmy, or kind of our obit story on Channel 3, but also a story about his battle with cancer and leukemia in his own words, going back for about the last 12 years. So I hope people will check it out. And I've also linked to how they can watch the entire show that we had tonight. So I hope you get a chance to do that. It's just kind of a just only for you guys, little tidbit. We're going to go back into the archives, and I'm going to be posting some of those old Donovan and Dino shows, Donovan Live postgame shows, with some of the best of Jimmy in the future, because those to me are like, they're buried treasure. There's something, I haven't looked at in 4 or 5 years, but they're amazing stories from an amazing career in life, and I want to make sure I can share those with people, because I think you really get to appreciate Jimmy and enjoy his humor and enjoy his stories a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Sorry, I'm all flustered now. Cause I was gonna ask Pat, can we play out,
that's what I was gonna do.
Okay.
The last one.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. With that, again,
you may want to stay with us till that part of the end, Dave. It's the one we talked about with the football win.
The radio call.
The radio call, yeah. So.
Yeah, I always look forward to it. Anything with my man Jimmy is great stuff. Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on with us. It was a lot of fun. We really enjoyed having you. And I'll turn it over to Erik to give the final, and then we'll hit the button here.
I want to thank again Dave for joining us. Thank you everybody for listening, and have a good night.
And don't forget Tyler Danberg.
Oh yeah, sorry Tyler, if you're listening. Thank you for joining too.
Stay on top of this boy every minute. I'm telling you.
Okay, now let's
have a good week.
Yes.
Let's hit this.
How about that? Team win.
If you're the Cleveland Browns, one play to get a huge emotional win. Let's go. 3 seconds. This is it for the win. Make some noise wherever you can hear the sounds of our voice right now. Lamar Jackson has the football. Browns rushing 4. Lamar flushed out. Lamar chased by Za'Darius. Lamar Jackson avoids Za'Darius. He's got to throw it. Directing traffic. Pump fake. Now throwing. End zone. Back corner. Still good and complete. The Browns win. 29-24. You just knew it. You knew it. You felt it. So many things happened in this game that are unexplainable. And it all added up to a Browns win. This one's for you, Jim Donovan. The Browns have beaten the Ravens. It is emotional here at Huntington Bank Field. What a win. What a moment. You can't even write stories this good sometimes, folks. Wow. Jim, I know you're smiling. 29-24 for their second win of the year. This is how it had to be. It's how it had to be.
The whole day of Michigan, the whole day of Michigan, the whole day of Michigan. Give a hand for the whole day of Michigan. We're from Ohio. We're from Ohio. We're from Ohio. Oh, give a hand for the whole day of Michigan, the whole day of Michigan, the whole day of Michigan. Give a hand for the whole day of Michigan. We're from Ohio.